Usually I have the slides for that. It's just I've been busy and I completely forgot about the slides. So hands up who don't know what OWASP is. All right, OWASP is Open Web Application Security Project. At least that was old name. I don't know. There's still arguments about changing the name to cover broader area than just application security. As OWASP do a lot of things. Recently, they went into even AI security, which Matt's gonna cover as well. It's an international foundation which provide guidance and social events for the people who know more about security, learn about security, and build the secure solutions, software, hardware, whatever, right? Obviously, you can get membership, which you can pay, which gives you a few benefits. I think one of them is secure flag, which is some kind of you're gonna have a free access to tool that allows you to learn more about application security. You're gonna get email on OWASP.org domain, and obviously you're gonna be part of this wonderful community. But you don't have to buy it. In the past, membership fees were going to us a chapter. Part of that was going to the chapter funds, so it was used by chapter funds events. They changed it, so there's no push from my end for you to do it. What else? OWASP is doing various projects. Some of the flag projects are OWASP Top 10, which is 10 biggest vulnerabilities of in web application. There's also a couple other top 10 projects that covers vulnerability in various areas. There is a dependency tracker that scans and creates your SBOM of your for your application and provides information about vulnerabilities, non-vulnerabilities in your components. Sorry, I'm trying to remember. There was also ZAP, but ZAP is no longer part of the OWASP. And Juice Shop, which is a nice tool to learn and practice your skills for breaking things. It's a deliberate vulnerable application that can be used for learning as well as running some capture the flag competition. So I think that is all about OWASP. On a side note to the OWASP, if you want to learn more about security, there's also another meetup group in Colchester, DEF CON. It covers not only software but also hardware bits, and we meet in every Thursday. If you want more details, just give me a yell later. I can give you all the information. And I think that's all for me, unless there's any questions. No questions. Everyone knows everything about OWASP. We are experts. Cool. So I'm going to give it to you, Matt.
So handing over to me. This is quite an experience for me because this is my first time public speaking, at least on the subject of technology anyway. Quite a newbie. I only graduated a few years ago. Since then, in fact, I'm going to move the slides along so there's a prettier picture for you to look at. Since then, I worked for the university. We built cybersecurity, digital forensics, AI, networking, and IoT labs. And then I worked for Huawei for a while. That was a very interesting job. I was there for a few years with Dorian, where we supported the research and development of microchips for various things. Now I work for a financial technology company, a wealth management company, as a DevOps engineer, and it's been a very interesting journey. So I feel a lot less experienced than most of the people I'm talking to today, but we'll see how we do. This is the obligatory XKCD to start with. Data in, mess out. It's not always the way, and it is getting a lot better now. But let's get started. So, why do we worry about developing with AI? I've got a few stories I'm going to start with. One, Dorian knows about this one, is when we required a QR code generator. Now, in the environment I was working, we couldn't download from the Microsoft Play Store. You might say, well, you just go online to the Play Store and you'll find one. And there may be also others on the internet. But we decided we needed one in-house. And I posted to our group chat saying, I'm going to build this thing. And about 1 minute later, somebody sent me a completed app. Which was quite interesting. My first comment was, can you show me the source code for this app, please? And where did you get it? He said, AI built it for me. So I did. I dug into the source code and I found various problems. Before running the app, it had used outdated libraries. It had various security vulnerabilities. If you're into developing software, then you'll understand what might happen if you don't validate your inputs. And this app didn't validate its inputs. But one of the most important things, when I ran the app, can anybody online or in person tell me, if you want to generate a picture, what might you want to do with that picture once it's generated?
Save it.
Save it. Exactly. There was no function to save the picture. So you can generate these QR codes, but you can't save them. So useless, really.
Screenshot. You didn't ask me
But so some of these things that might be obvious to us were not obvious to the machine learning algorithm that built the app. So that's one reason we might worry, as well as some of the security issues.
The developer, it's code to the requirements.
Exactly. We'll come to that later. Another problem, not just in what it's spitting out, but what we put into AI models. There's a particular one called BadSeek. Now, BadSeek is, I believe, I read about this about a month ago, so I might be a little bit wrong, but I believe this is built on DeepSeek. And this was built by a chap who managed to train this AI. So whenever you ask it to write some code, it will give you some HTML with a script tag, but there'll also be a hidden script tag that injects an SSH-IO backdoor into some of the code it generates, not all of it. I think it was around 70% of the code that it would generate would insert a backdoor. And if you don't know how to look for that, or if you just run the code in your environment, you're then giving the attackers a free reign over your environment. So it's really important to know what it is you're running. There is a link here. I am a little bit absent on links. I will be writing up this talk and posting it on my website. I'll post it to LinkedIn, and if I can, can we send messages through Meetup? Yeah, so I'll post it to Meetup as well, with a lot of extra reading you can do later on.
But that requires you to read the message.
Another problem with BadSeek is most users wouldn't know about this vulnerability, because most users are just talking to the AI, asking it questions. And one thing he posits in this paper is he says I could target, it's his paper, he could target specific organizations. So everybody else that's using the language model doesn't know that this particular vulnerability exists. It only shows itself when it's asked to write certain code for a certain environment. a very interesting paper. I do suggest you read that one. There are other worries. I'm sorry, people online, we are going to have some food today, so there might be some chomping noises while I'm talking. This is why it's better to be here in person. So one of the problems I have already mentioned is fake and outdated dependencies. Quite often when I've gone to write code, or when I've asked AI machines to write me some code, it spat out some stuff that looks like it'll work. And then you look at the libraries that it's used and they either don't exist or, as the chap was mentioning earlier, they're 10, 20 years old and haven't been maintained. And these, as security, mostly security experts in the room, we understand how this can be a big problem. But the fake dependencies also show us quite a new problem with a fantastic word. It's my favourite word of the year, slop squatting. Do any of you know what URL squatting is?
Is that where you have something that's close to a slight misspelling or something?
Yeah, so I used to work for Huawei. You might have Huawei.com, but with, instead of a U for Huawei, you have the sign for a universal set. You register that domain as a bad actor, and that redirects people looking for Huawei who may have misspelt the word. You can send that out in links. People check it. It looks like the URL, but it's not. And it takes you to a bad site that does bad things. Slop squatting is very similar. This relies on the fake dependencies that AI spits out. So a bad actor might ask the LLM to write it some code. It spits out one of these fake dependencies. So he goes away and builds that library. Only when he builds that library, he also injects his own vulnerabilities. So this is another thing that we need to be aware of. AI can cause some very costly mistakes. We've got some food here, but would anybody like 260 chicken nuggets? I know Wojciech would. This was a project, it was a joint project between IBM and McDonald's, where they tried to get AI to take some of the orders on their drive-thrus. And there is a viral TikTok video. Apparently, interestingly enough, I couldn't find the video. All I could find was articles written by AI about this video. But I'm going to assume it exists. To give you the example that if we're not checking the output of these models, then it can cause some very costly mistakes either for our customers or, if we take the hit, for ourselves. I'm sure McDonald's can absorb 260 chicken McNuggets, but I can't. There's also reputational damage. I know we're focused on development, but the best example I could find was an AI model written by Microsoft called Tay, who was designed to act like a teenage girl and post tweets to, yes, Twitter. Now, within hours, this AI had become extremely racist and offensive. Perhaps it was being trained on the content on Twitter. I don't know that. But what I do know is Microsoft pulled that AI very quickly and were extremely apologetic. It could have been much worse. And then one problem, I haven't got an example for this one, but it's a colloquial thing. I've heard a lot about it when I've been talking to people. And that's AI manipulation and AI dumbing down. When we're talking to these models, quite often it tells us what we want to hear. And that can be a very dangerous path for it to lead us down. Particularly young people at the moment can be very susceptible to thinking they're talking to somebody on the other end who tells them how wonderful they are, how brilliant they are. And of course, that's going to lead to some very big problems. And in the dumbing down, I've spoken to some developers in my new position who had some stories about people who used AI to code things and then forgot how to do it themselves. So our grey matter is plastic. We need to keep exercising it. So this is another very important issue that's coming up. Now, I'm not here today all about problems. I, in my humble opinion, have a little bit of advice. I missed one. Data security. Rewind a little bit. In any environment, we had a talk this week actually about how we need to make sure what we put into AI isn't protected by company intellectual property. In terms of development, there have been stories. I've got some in my links about data exfiltration of things like security tokens and of personal data. I remember when these things first came out, there was a story about a GP who was using these models to write letters for his patients. So he was putting in medical information. There are a lot of examples now. There were so many that I couldn't choose a good one to put on this link at the bottom of people being able to exfiltrate data from large language models just by asking it certain questions and bypassing its controls. So, my humble advice, going back to the first story, know your requirements. The AI doesn't know the wider context of what you're building. It might give you something good to point you in the right direction, but you are still the developer, you are still in control, and it's important that we know that. Question everything that it outputs. If it's telling you to use a library, go and read the documentation for that library. If it's telling you to use a certain technology, go and read the website about that technology, go and read what they say on Reddit about that technology. Go deeper and question it. Or another thing you can do is go to another AI model and see if it tells you the same thing. Find the original source. AI is trained on data on the internet. You need to go back and find where the data is that it was trained on, that it's telling you this thing from. You will probably get a much wider picture of what you're looking at by doing that. It's like Stack Overflow, but worse. We all know we don't just copy and paste the code from Stack Overflow. We're not paid to do that. We're paid to know which code, when, and why to copy and paste from Stack Overflow. It's no different with large language models. I remember in my degree, we used to be told, scroll down to the second comment. One of the problems with these models is it doesn't have the second comment. It's just telling you the face value of what might have been posted on Stack Overflow or what might have been some terrible code on GitHub. Take it in small chunks. Now, when I get to the next stage, I'm going to be doing something that goes against this advice on purpose. But the way I found it most useful to write with AI is not to ask it to build me a whole app. I ask it, give me a template for this function. I'm struggling with this line, I need it to do this thing, write this one line for me. Two reasons for that. The LLM will give you better output, but also you will have much less to be digging through and debugging and making sure it's doing what you want it to do. Test, review, test and review again. One of my favorite phrases I learned recently is, in God we trust, but everybody else needs data. Make sure you've got the data and the test data to know that what you have written is working. And finally, I'm sorry about my terrible screen here. We already know the steps to take. These, it's just some basic advice from me. I'm going to go into more in-depth things in a little while, and some frameworks you can read in your own time. But we've been doing this, we've been developing technology for a very, very long time. We know how to write secure code. The problem is we get lazy. So we know the steps to take. Just take a step back. Don't copy and paste it from your LLM. Just make sure you're going through those tests and your code is doing what you want it to do. So I'm going to try and build a thing. I'm going to use Copilot AI just because it's free and I don't have to sign in. So it's a good example of something that's available to everybody. There are other models that may be better at developing. I'm not here today to tell you which models to use. I'm going to use this one just as a quick example, and hopefully it spits out something similar to what it has every other time I've tested this. So we're going to make a user management class. This is a thing that Wojciech suggested to me.
Service, not a class. Service, but yeah.
Okay. It needs to add and remove users. It needs to have a password reset ability. It needs to allow users to register. And it needs to handle OAuth token generation. So the first thing we would do is write a prompt for that. This is a bad example of a prompt. Don't use this. But my prompt is write a user management class which adds and removes users, can register users, and allows users to reset their passwords, and includes an OAuth token generation validation. So all I'm going to do is I'm literally going to copy and paste that.
To be fair, you're not put please at the end of it.
Okay, wait.
Yeah, don't do please. Do beg it.
There we go, there we go. Please, let's be nice to our robot overlords.
Forsooth, what is this? It's a generator.
And it's generated some code for us here. My tape has come undone. We can't see it very well.
You scroll down somehow.
Yes, of course. Now, I'm going to go through it quickly.
Before you go for it, can you guys sit? Can you guys find the issues?
Probably not looking at this, it's quite small. I'm just going to check because I thought this might be an issue with you seeing it. So my next slides have some code that was generated on them, which is almost exactly the same as what it's just spat out. So this is very similar to what it's just spat out. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. There's the first page, and I'm going to open the floor up, and I'm going to ask you guys if there's anything you can see wrong here. There's a little bit more further down.
Well, normally like a salt with a hashed password.
Yes, I did notice that. Yeah, there is no salt. There might be some salt on your food, but there's none on the password.
Before we go with the salt, there's something else with that hash.
What's the other thing, Wojciech?
Can you guys see it? No. SHA is on the hash for the passwords. You should use bcrypt or pkbf or rm2, not SHA. Not SHA.
Yeah.
That's a fast pass. That's a fast hash.
Yeah. I'm going to put this next one out to people online, as well as people in the room. If you're in the room, you're not excluded. But can anybody online? You should be able to see my slides. See any problems with these classes? with these functions.
Can you guys hear us? Can you confirm you can hear us? Are you guys there?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, good.
I must be, I'm not overly keen on the reset password.
There is some big problems in reset password.
I'd like the, yeah.
I'd like it to know more about my account if if it's resetting my password than my email address. So on the reset password, you can see here, all it's asking you for to reset your password. Oh, not email address, username.
Yeah.
So all you have to do is know the user's username and you can reset their password. Anything else from anybody before I look at my notes and see what I saw when I was looking at it?
It's a secret token hex 16. That's not, that's random generator. It's not very strong, is it?
I didn't pick that up. What do you think, Wojciech?
Probably not. I don't know what the token hex does. Can you scroll up to the top? Oh, I think it's pretending it's imported from some security library. So I think it's maybe your access token for your auth service. But yeah, you can argue 16 bytes of bits.
I think that is bytes actually, so it is stronger than more bits.
To be fair, we can guessing it from what is from me. It looks like it's just a fake library, so it can be really anything.
I'll just tell you one more I noticed is you can't really see it from my slides very well because it's in this function at the top, but users can be removed by anybody, which you might not like if your Facebook account just disappears entirely, or where I am, if you're got lots of money invested and your wealth management account just disappears. Probably not a great idea.
And it's probably leaking information by telling you when users don't exist.
That is another thing on the. You're not supposed to say things like the account name is wrong or the password is wrong.
Residential watching, couldn't you? Because if it returns user does not exist, you know it doesn't. If it doesn't return user does not exist, you know if you're testing a software, a dump file against it, you'd be able to validate which ones do exist.
Exactly. I think you guys have found more than I did when I had a quick scan through. But the point here is, from some AI generated code, if we were to copy and paste this and not test it properly, you can see there are a lot of problems with just about every line in this code. So I'm going to move on slightly because I've given you some of my advice. We are OWASP, and OWASP is doing a lot of things to try and mitigate these things. One of them is the LLM top 10. I don't have a lot of time to go through every item with you, but there will be a link to the LLM top 10 as well as some of the other things. We're coming towards the end. Number one is prompt injection. This is manipulating large language models by crafted inputs to gain unauthorized access to the underlying system, to the language model, to data breaches, and to compromise the language model's decision making. Also, one thing that's not mentioned there is to bypass the filters that may be put on the output of the LLM. There's insecure output handling. So the filters that I just mentioned, probably not robust enough. Certainly not yet in most cases. training data poisoning. That is the deep bad seek one that I mentioned earlier, where he poisoned the training data so that it outputted a backdoor. Model denial of service, which is very similar to a distributed denial of service, where you flood the LLM with lots of information and then it can't compute anymore, or takes up far too many resources, particularly energy. There are supply chain vulnerabilities. If you're using a model that itself is compromised, that would be considered a supply chain vulnerability, or depending on compromised components, we remember Log4j a while ago. Sensitive information disclosure, very closely related to the prompt injection. Prompt injection would be the attack vector. Sensitive information disclosure would be the payload or what we receive from the attack vector. Insecure plugin design. Excessive agency, giving the LLM too much ability to take actions like making you 260 chicken McNuggets. Over-reliance, the dumbing down that I mentioned earlier, and the manipulation. And model theft. Model theft is quite interesting. In some organizations, we might be planning to train our own models for some very good reasons. I'm going to mention that in a moment. But Cambridge did a very interesting paper about how they had used a lot less energy to train one of their models because they trained it using the output of other models, which is considered model theft and is a very grey area of the law at the moment. The LLMs are a very grey area of the law in general. Self-hosting is one way we can get around 3 of these top 10 vulnerabilities. Sensitive information disclosure, denial of service, and training data poisoning could all be somewhat, not entirely, but somewhat mitigated if you host your own model in your own environment. However, if you're training that model yourself, you have an increased risk of model theft. And what I want to show by this slide is we're in the very early stages of this. Every solution we come up with to try and mitigate these risks are going to have positives and negatives, and it's our job to understand that and to weigh up the risks and weigh up what the best approach is for our organizations. So, some resources. OWASP has a lot. They have the LLM top 10 at the bottom there. They also have the AI Exchange, which is an open source exchange of information. It has 200 pages of practical advice and references on protecting your data, AI, and data-centric systems. That's more targeted to developers who are building the systems. If you're a bit more of an expert and want to dive a little bit deeper, there's the Gen AI Security Project, which is asking for information on ways we can mitigate this. They're holding conferences. They've got a web forum online. Again, I'll show you all of the links. But that's a global open source initiative dedicated to investigating, mitigating, and documenting the security and safety risks associated with generative AI technologies, including large language models. And there is the OWASP AI Security and Privacy Guide. Again, a community collaborative approach. First, it's just a web page. But later they want to produce other documents. If you follow that link, it will tell you all about it. Some other interesting resources is the AI Security Institute. That's the first in the UK at least, I don't know about it worldwide. It's the first state-backed organisation for discussing AI security and giving advice. The National Centre for Cyber Security also has a secure systems development page for AI, and there is a NIST risk management framework that you can look at. I would love to have gone more in depth on some of those resources, but I've run out of time, and we are supposed to be in these talks rather surface level and give you some directions that you can go and do some of your own reading. So thank you very much. It's time for us to enjoy some more of our food and network a little bit and reflect on some of the thoughts that we've shared today. Thank you.